So, our next lesson will be on multiplying rational expressions. So, when multiplying rational expressions, we want to multiply, if there's any number out in front of our root, we want to multiply them together. So that's -2 times 3 there. We are getting -6. Now, we multiply our square roots together. Square root of 5 times the square root of 6 is the same thing as saying the square root of 5 times 6 underneath our square root. And that is equal to -6 times the square root of 30. So now for example 2. Let's say I would have the square root of 11 times 4 times the square root of 11. Now with this, I have a 1 out in front of that square root there. So 1 times 4 is giving me 4. Then I have the square root of 11 times 11 underneath my square root. Well, the square root of 11 times 11 is the square root of 11 squared. So the square root cancels out our square there. And now we get 4 times 11. In other words, 11 times 11 is also the same thing as the square root of 121. And that just becomes 11. So now 4 times 11 becomes 44 for your final answer. So example 3. Let's say I would have the square root of 6 times 5 minus 2 square root of 3 here. So we have our parentheses. This means we're distributing the square root of 6 inside. So the square root of 6 is getting multiplied by this 5, and then the 2 square root of 3 there. So this becomes 5 times the square root of 6 minus 2 times the square root of 3 times the square root of 6. Now, this becomes 5 times the square root of 6 minus 2 times the square root of 3 times 6, 18. Now, with all of these problems, we always need to make sure our square roots are as simplified as possible in our final answer. So the square root of 6, I know that's 2 times 3. That can't get simplified anymore, so 5 square root of 6 is okay. However, 18, well, that can get broken down into 9 times 2. 9 is 3 times 3, so we have a pair of 3's there, and then we have a 2 left all by itself. Those pair of 3's get multiplied with that 2 out in front, so we have 5 square root of 6 minus 3 times 2 times the square root of 2 now. Well, 3 times 2, that's just becoming 6 times the square root of 2 then. So that's your final answer there for example 3. So now, last but not least, example 4. We have 5 minus 2 square root of 3 times 2 plus 3 square root of 3. Now here, we have 2 terms in both of these expressions, 1, 2, 1, 2. So that means we have to FOIL. So again, FOIL means we're multiplying first 5 times 2. Outer is 5 times 3 square root of 3. Inner is -2 square root of 3 times 2. So that's minus 2 times 2 square root of 3. And then last is minus 2 square root of 3 times 3 square root of 3. So now let's clean all this up and get it simplified. 5 times 2 there, nice and easy, that's going to be 10. 5 times 3 there is 15 square root of 3 minus 4 square root of 3 minus 2 times 3 is 6. The square root of 3 times the square root of 3. Well, that's equal to the square root of 3 times 3, which is equal to the square root of 9. And that becomes 3. So we're left with 6 times 3 there. 6 times 3, that's just going to become 18. So now we have 18 plus 15 square root of 3 minus 4 square root of 3 minus 18. So 15 minus 4 square root of 3 is 11 square root of 3. 10 minus 18 there is just minus 8.